What's going on, Lacrosse fans? Welcome to the PLL Flash on the Lacrosse Flash Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Hulsebos, joined by Flash Editor-in-Chief Austin Owens and Lacrosse Insider Dan Arestia as we get set to look back at a wild Week 1 in the PLL, where we saw the Woods roll over the Cannons in Chrome, the Whipsnakes and Archers, two of the best teams in the 2020 Championship Series, proving to us exactly what we expected coming into the weekend. And then the Water Dogs and the Atlas, a rocky start, is putting it rather nicely, but we'll hope that both of those two teams, with all the changes and new faces getting worked into the mix, that they will figure it out in time, hopefully very soon. And we're going to get right into it here. Into all of that in a few moments. But again, Austin, Dan, welcome to our first edition of the PLL Flash here in PLL Year 3. How are you guys doing on this Tuesday, just about 2 full days removed from a wild first weekend?
I will just say I'm feeling good. Shout out to Pat Gregoire because he made me up my shirt game a little bit. I got to rock the pineapples today. And yeah, that's it for today. I'll concede my time to Dan.
My shirt game is not pineapples. I'm rocking Connecticut legendary pizza stops. Come to Connecticut for our pizza. It's the best in America. I'm feeling good. I thought Week 1 was great. Lots of exciting lacrosse. Everything on the field was a ton of fun to watch. There's obviously a ton of stuff to talk about. And I'm counting the minutes already for Friday night for Week 2. They got the hook in me, and I can't wait for more.
Hey, Joe Keegan tweeted out earlier on Monday. He said the good thing about having 3 days of lacrosse is that the week is shorter before we get more lacrosse. So only 4 days or 3 days now in the week there before we get to it. But as you said, a wild first weekend of PLL lacrosse, and we're going to dive right into all of it right now. But I want to start by first congratulating Charlotte North of Boston College and Jared Bernhard of Maryland, your 2021 Women's and Men's Division I Tewaaraton Award winners, announced during halftime of the Whipsnakes in Chaos game on Saturday. Charlotte North, the queen of the North, scored 102 goals for the BC Eagles this season en route to a national championship. And Bernhard, on the other hand, came up 1 goal short in that men's national championship, his team losing to Virginia just last week. But he also put together a phenomenal season, 71 goals, which is a Maryland program record, 28 assists, totaling 99 points. He holds pretty much every career record there is there at Maryland, and helping his team to a perfect season all the way up until that championship game. Like I said, coming just 1 goal shy of tying that game and sending it to overtime. But Dan, all season it seemed like this award had these two names written all over it, Charlotte North and Jared Bernhard, both of them dominating right out of the gate to start the season and then helping their teams play all the way through to Memorial Day.
Yeah, for Bernhard in particular, I think it was interesting as the year went on, because there was that sort of undercurrent, that undertheme of people being like, well, he's just torching Big Ten defenses that aren't all that good, that he's running up the point total against the Michigans and the Penn States and the Hopkins of the world, whereas guys like Chris Gray or Michael Sowers or Pat Cavanaugh are doing it in the ACC, where they see tougher defenses, they see Will Bowen, they see JT Giles-Harris. So I think as the year went on and as Maryland made their run to the national championship game, Bernhard went through some of those teams and continued to be a ridiculously good lacrosse player. And it became more of a runaway. For me, it was, kind of earlier in the season, I thought Bernhard really took the reins of it. And I think it was after their 4th or 5th game or something like that, where I had tweeted that I thought Bernhard was starting to run away with it. And most weeks I found myself being like, let's see what the other guys can do to close the gap. But I didn't, from midseason on, it didn't seem like anybody was going to catch him. He's just too electric of a player.
Austin, the queen of the North, 102 goals this season. Phenomenal year for her. She's coming back to BC now for 2022. National champion. Unbelievable season for her, though.
Yeah, prayers up to the entirety of NCAA Division I women's lacrosse for Charlotte North coming back for another year. I was joking around during the weekend of, Charlotte North at Gillette. I mean, geez, there are a couple teams that looked like they could have used her at attack right there. Just give her a helmet and some gloves and let her go. But, I mean, the stats speak for themselves. Words, Ryan. Again, 102 goals. I mean, come on now. Just unbelievable numbers. First national championship for BC women's Lax, and she was just dominant. I mean, you knew she was going to win it. And it's not unfair to say, as many people have said it, that she was the best player, period, men's and women's, in college lacrosse this season. I think that speaks to just how dominant she is. And once again, the women's game is getting that much more exciting. And now you sort of have the next face of it, I would say, coming up. Obviously, you're going to have to wait a year, but I think Athletes United is going to be, or Athletes Unlimited, is going to be very excited to get her playing for them next year.
An absolutely incredible season and careers for both of these young athletes. And although we'll have to wait to see Jared Bernhard again for a little bit, Charlotte North, as I said before, did announce yesterday in a video posted to social media, all Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski-esque with goalie Rachel Hall, that she will be returning on her 5th year of eligibility to Boston College for the 2022 season. So we're looking forward to that and what she can do here in her final year of college lacrosse. And then, as Austin said before, hoping that she can continue her playing career into the pros. Let's stay with college lacrosse here real fast, because while Sunday's games winded down amongst everything else that seemed to be unfolding on Sunday afternoon, we got breaking news that Syracuse women's lacrosse coach Gary Gait, who's widely considered as one of the best lacrosse players in lacrosse history, has been named the head coach of the Syracuse men's lacrosse program, becoming just the 5th head coach in the program's 106-year history, replacing head coach John Desko, a 5-time national champion head coach who's been on the Orange staff since 1980 and the head coach since 1999. He announced his retirement yesterday. So a sort of weird way to announce everything, Dan. The head coach announcement kind of slipping through the cracks before you're able to properly send off your legendary head coach who's done so much for this program for the last 50, however many years, really. But Desko officially retiring after a tough 2021 season with Gary Gait to take over head coaching duties, presumably for years and years to come.
Yeah, when somebody takes a Syracuse job, it's their job for a long time. It's been out there at this point. I think Gary's the 5th head coach in the history of Syracuse lacrosse, and they've been playing lacrosse there since like 1916 or something like that. So they've been playing for 100 years. They've had as many coaches as there have been PlayStations. Like the Q's lacrosse job is insane. So for Gary to take it, I think I was talking to Tari, to the official Lax girl on Twitter. You guys know her as, and I told her I think the only job in America that Gary Gait would have left the Q's women for is the one he took, is the Q's men. I don't think there's any other job out there. And I think at this point, he said he had turned down men's coaching jobs and stuff like that because he's obviously just, so in love with the job that he had and was doing such a great job there. So it's an exciting hire for Syracuse. I don't think there's any way that can happen and it doesn't leak out. There's just it's too big of a program, too big of a name, too big of a job for that to be held under wraps for too long. So the news kind of came out when it did, kind of ahead of Desko's retirement announcement, which I think is unfortunate because Desko has been there a long time. He's won 5 titles there. He's played for another in that time. He's a legendary coach. I tweeted a little thread just sort of appreciating some of the things that have happened in his tenure there. So I thought it was a little strange to see him basically say a few months ago, I'm still going to be here. And then, I think it's been within a few weeks, he's taking pictures with his number 1 recruit, Joey Spallina, like getting ready to welcome him to Q's. And now we've made a decision to retire. So a lot can happen. I'm not in John Desko's head, but that was a little it's kind of a quick roller coaster of events. But, I think you could see just how revered also Desko has been by his players. As soon as it came out, you saw guys like Drake Porter and Peter Dirth and Nate Solomon and one guy after another tweeting how much they appreciated their time at Q's and their time playing for Coach Desko. So, I wish him well. I hope he stays close to the game. He's obviously, like I said, a legendary coach. One of the things I tweeted was that if you count the time he spent at Q's as an assistant, he has spent more years of his life as a member of the Q's coaching staff than not a member of the Q's coaching staff. And he turns 64 this year. That's an insane amount of time that he's been part of that program. So cheers to Coach Desko. Best wishes in his retirement. Again, I hope he stays close to the game because he's done so many great things for it. And again, you can tell from the outpouring from his players just how revered he was by the guys he coached.
I was born in the year 2000, so today marks the first day that John Desko is not the Syracuse head coach in my lifetime. So that's right there. That in and of itself is pretty remarkable. But the search for Gates' replacement as Syracuse women's head coach is currently underway. We'll expect that they find an incredible candidate to fill that role, as well as it's definitely one of those more sought-out positions among the women's college lacrosse coaching tiers. But the university did announce last night that Caitlin DeFleece would serve as the interim women's coach. But John Desko, 265 victories as head coach of the Orange, 529 in total as a player and coach, and a mentor to some of the greatest players that the game has seen. So again, we thank Coach Desko for everything that he's done for the game over the years, helping to grow the game, and we look forward to, as Dan said, to what he can continue to do here in this next stage of his life, being retirement. All right, time to talk some PLL lacrosse, and we'll start with the first game of the weekend, which did turn out to be the best game of the weekend between the Redwoods and the expansion Cannons. The Cannons in their first season as a part of the PLL, and it wasn't too bad of a start for the 8th Lacrosse Club. We'll get to their second game of the weekend next, which was, in fact, a win, but they took a loss here in Game 1 at the hands of the Redwoods. However, Nick Morocco was fantastic. 21 saves, stopped 64% of the shots on goal that he faced. Paul Rabel turned back the clock. He netted 3 goals and added an assist on the evening. Lyle Thompson, it took him all of 56 seconds to score his first goal. He finished with 2 and an assist, but for every star that emerged for the Cannons, it seemed like the Redwoods had an answer every time. Morocco makes 20-plus saves, while Tim Trauner, after winning that Redwoods goalie battle in camp, posts 19 and a save percentage of 63. Rob Pannell, our Flash Player of the Week, scores a hat trick and adds an assist. Miles Jones, Matt Cavanaugh, Ryan Lee, and Jules Henningberg each scored twice and pick up assists as well. But the biggest storyline in a game that came down to the wire, rookie T.D. Erland wins 21 of 20 faceoffs in his PLL debut with help there from his face-off wings, completely, though, flipping that script in terms of what we've grown accustomed to with the Whipsnakes face-off unit in Austin. Not a bad way for the Woods to get 2021 started.
Yeah, I mean, in talking to Nat St. Laurent, he said, let's just get to 50 and see what this team can do. And TD gives him 78% off the first game of the season. And Nat was super excited by that. But obviously, as TD said and as Nat has said and as pretty much everyone has said, it's not just TD doing the work. It's his wings that were incredible. Pat Harbison and I believe it was John Sexton were both coming in and making great plays on the ball, and they were battling. And I feel a little bit for Tommy Kelly because obviously coming off of last season, a lot of was made of what happened with him in chaos and him being exposed and what he could bring to the table. Now you look at it, he was winning a lot of the clamps as he did last year, but his wing play, I don't want to slander any of the guys that are on the wings for the Cannons, obviously, but they were just out-battled, unfortunately, and that's just what it comes down to. The funny thing enough for the Cannons is they were winning for a large chunk of that game during the second half. Like it didn't really seem to affect them very much because, they were getting saves from Nick Morocco, excuse me. Oh my God, I am losing it right now, fellas. Nick Morocco was fantastic. I believe he had something around 21 saves. Just unbelievable numbers. I think they call him Brick Morocco. They were tweeting that out earlier today. So he was exactly that. He was fantastic. And I mean, Lyle got held off the scoreboard. Usually when you win, under 30% of your draws and Lyle Thompson is held to 2 points, you're usually going to have a pretty bad time. Paul Rabel was unbelievable in that game. He was a guy, I didn't want to tweet this out because I felt like I'd be a bit of an ass, but we were doing the MVP long shot thing. And I put him down just like hey, maybe he'll have a bounce back this season. And he, through 2 games, it's looking pretty good. He might not win the MVP, but he's certainly back. He's certainly back. So, the Cannons didn't come out at the winning end of that game. And the Redwoods are a hell of a team. I mean, we talked about it on GLE last week leading up to it. That is one of the worst draws you could have in the league other than maybe the Archers and obviously the Whipsnakes. But the Cannons held their own and they looked fantastic throughout most of that game, despite everything I've talked about. Nick Morocco was fantastic. Rabel's back. And Lyle's not going to be held to 2 goals, and I think he had an assist. He's not going to be held to that few amount. Garrett Epple did a fantastic job as well. We have to give him props where it's due. So I think the Cannons obviously showed later in the week what they can do, so I'm not too worried about them at all. But that first game, you expected them to maybe have some jitters. There was none of it, and they looked fantastic against the Woods.
The Cannons did look really good. The Redwoods, though, off to a really strong start, and we'll get into their second game, a win over Chrome, in a little bit. But we will bounce around here, and we're going to stay with the Cannons because on Sunday afternoon, they managed to get back up to 500 with a decisive victory over the Water Dogs. And I say decisive because at no point was this game even close. Rabel continued his strong weekend, scoring 2 goals. Lyle Thompson and Andrew Q each added to their goal totals from Friday night as well, finishing the weekend with 6 goals and an assist each in their PLL debuts. Flash Rookie of the Week, Stephen Rayfest, proved why he was slept on through April's college draft. And Morocco was again phenomenal. 11 saves, good for 65%, in Austin. The Cannons get their first W as a part of the PLL.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, just to bounce back after that loss, I mean, you felt that they had the momentum and they go in and do it against the Water Dogs. And I mean, I think the story is more, the Cannons had a really good game, but I think what everyone was talking about is a lot of people were touting the Water Dogs as Dan. I'm not going to call you out here, but a lot of us were saying like, holy hell, the Water Dogs, what an offseason they had. Out. You bring in Eli Gobrecht, you get Michael Sowers, you get Dylan Ward to be in that. Like everything looked like it was trending upwards, and I've said as much with the Water Dogs. And I don't want to say it's, it's one game in, their season's not over, but that was a rough one to watch. Their man up was really bad. I know Dan on Twitter today was talking, in his takeaways, I should say. You can't take a shot clock violation on a man up opportunity. Like that's inexcusable in pro lacrosse. You have to at least put one on the goalie and make him work for it. And their offense just did not look in sync. Their defense, Eli Gobrecht in his first game being asked to guard Lyle Thompson is not a fun time for anybody. They didn't play Ben Randall, which was an interesting one because he's a guy that actually guarded Lyle Thompson in the MLL last year. It's sort of a learning experience. I mean, if you have to take something away from that game if you're Andy Copeland, and it's what they had planned or what they had schemed up just wasn't working. So it's back to the drawing board this week. But I mean, all due respect to the Cannons, Lyle was fantastic. Rabel was fantastic against Stephen Rayfest. Unbelievable again. He was, I keep quoting Dan because he had some good material this week. So shout out to you, buddy. But Stephen Rayfest, I mean, he was just unbelievable. Like he looks like the steal of the draft. That's exactly what Dan said. Justin Anderson's another one that looked very good for Chrome, but man, a 4th round pick, I believe he was. He was dynamite. Like he's the one that might have stood out over the Rabels and the Thompsons this week, if not for Morocco, I should say. So credit to the Cannons, but the Dogs are sort of the headline here, unfortunately.
Austin, you mentioned it there, and you mentioned Pat's name before. For today's show, the original plan was to have Dan and Pat with me here on this show. Austin, you're filling in here for Pat as he had another commitment, but I say that because myself, Dan and Pat, you alluded to it before, over the past how many weeks leading up to this season have been gassing up the Water Dogs and all the moves that Coach Copeland has made this offseason. You brought up a handful of the guys that they've brought in. Michael Sowers unfortunately did sustain that head injury, which we'll get to in a minute. But Dan, what happened to the Water Dogs this weekend and ahead of next weekend where they're playing a doubleheader with games on Friday against the Chaos and then again on Sunday against Chrome? How do they turn this rough start around? And they might not have Michael Sowers, which is, again, a huge loss.
I spent the whole offseason saying that the Water Dogs had won it, saying that they had the best offseason of anybody, and then they absolutely lay an egg in week 1, and I'm, looking like a dope, like Andy Copeland, come on, the 203 guys, we got to stick together. You got to give me a better showing than that. But, the Austin covered some of it. Their man up needs to be better. Their man up needs to be a man up, right? They need to have some kind of motion, some kind of scheme, something in place out there because – against the Cannons, it was literally like, 5 guys in a circle and a guy on the crease, and let's just try and spin it quickly and see if we can get somebody open with the defense rotating kind of slow and take a shot. And that's, again, I don't want to like dump on the Water Dogs coaching staff, but that's like a men's league man up. Like you're pros with some really talented players. We got to do something better than that. So, I would love to see them have a much improved man up. Defensively, I'd like to see them win matchups a little better, stick to matchups a little better, be a little more decisive. If they're going to be aggressive, be aggressive. If you're going to slide early to people, go to people. They were in some situations against the Cannons where a guy kind of hedged off his man and like he was going to go double, but just got caught in no man's land. And then that becomes like a Rayfest assist or a Lyle assist. And in the pros, if you do that, if you don't act decisively on defense and you're in no man's land for a split second, you get punished by players like this. So, you want to just see them be a little more schematically sound, and then you want to make them just a little more, just focused and mentally ready. There were some too many men penalties. There were some penalties in the sub game. There were some silly kind of offsides, like I didn't know who was staying back kind of things. Like that's got to get ironed out. That needs to stop happening in camp. That can't be happening anymore in week 1, let alone week 2. So you want to see those things, the stuff that they can control, the unforced errors that become turnovers and the shot clock violations on man up. I hope I never see one again, but that's where you start is with that kind of stuff, is really cleaning up your own scheme.
Gambling wise, I had such a strong Saturday between the Archers and Whipsnakes blowing out their respective opponents. Those are both pretty easy calls, just given how good those teams are. I had some nice parlays going on, and then I'll remind everyone again, 26 goals is the magic number in terms of over-under right now. So if you see a 25.5, take the under. But the War Dogs, man, they kicked off a scary Sunday for me between them completely dropping the ball. I had Chrome winning in the under in that game, which finished at 25. Would have been 26 if that two-pointer from Justin Anderson did count. But case in point, magic number still 26. But yeah, that just started a very poor day for me as just really a sports fan. I'm going to go through it right now. Gamecock baseball got eliminated in their regional tournament. The Yankees lost. I'd say my team right now in the NBA is the Sixers. I got a bunch of buddies here at school that are Sixers fans. They lost game 1 to the Hawks. The Giants watched as Julio Jones got traded for a second round and a fifth round pick. We have all these young receivers. Couldn't have made a deal for one of them, and you know, it doesn't matter how many picks. It's Julio Jones, but there's my rant of Sunday. Definitely wasn't the greatest of days. Still, we had pro lacrosse, and we finished week 5, or we finished 5-4, on the week for Bosa's Bets, which I'll continue here on Twitter into next week. But I woke up Sunday, going to be completely honest, a little beat up from the night before. Once the War Dogs took that shot clock violation, now you mentioned before, on that man up non-releasable, I just knew it was going to be one of those days. But really, the biggest story coming out of the War Dogs is that rookie attackman. I mentioned it before, Michael Sowers. He spent the night in the hospital following that game after that end of the third quarter hit by Reese Eddy. Eddy was assessed that 2-minute non-releasable, but according to a tweet from Mr. Sowers, the CT scan ruled that there was trauma to the head, which definitely are situations that we want to eliminate here in pro lacrosse. Checks are up around that head and neck area. So we hope that Mike is all right. Obviously, his well-being being the most important thing right now. But Austin, if he is to miss any time, that will come as some very unwelcoming news there for lacrosse fans. Really, he was him and Zach Courier, the starters, the initiators there of that offense.
Yeah, it's really tough to see Sowers go down, and I don't really – yeah, you don't want to force him back into the lineup, obviously, and I know Coach Copeland won't, so I'm not saying that. But, yeah, it's tough. Your first career game, you know, Sowers is a guy that his speed sort of dictates that he's able to drive the crease, and, you know, guys slide a little harder in the pro game, I'd like to think, than they do in college. And, you know, they're a little heavier too, so they're coming to take your head off, and I don't mean that in a literal sense. It's an unfortunate hit. I know there's been a lot of back and forth on Twitter today about it, and Reese Eddy not necessarily being blamed, but sort of like, should he be suspended? Shouldn't he? I mean, I don't think definitely wasn't malicious. I don't think, and I mean, there's definitely people that are out there that disagree with me. I don't think it's such a high speed game, and Sowers is such a speedy kid that he's trying to slide down so hard to the crease that he just ends up putting his stick up, and an unfortunate situation happens. So could he get suspended? Sure. I mean, if Sowers misses time, it's kind of the case you can make that, hey, he might have to sit out a game just because a rookie got injured. If he doesn't miss time, then, I mean, it is what it is. There's going to be some people upset. There's going to be some other people, but we all just hope Sowers is okay, because you saw it in that game. He was electric. I mean, he's just got a little unlucky with crease violations, but that kid is going to be unbelievable for the Water Dogs, and they're going to need him for sure, especially because, like you said, like Courier, they were the initiators of that offense.
We'll hope that Michael Sowers can make a speedy recovery, especially ahead of a pivotal doubleheader weekend for the War Dogs this weekend in week 2. And like Grant Amen did last year, you mentioned it there, Sowers making the transition from college to the program looked pretty seamless. So we'll hope that good news is the next news that we hear regarding Michael Sowers. And then the PLL Cannons able to get their first win of the season and in franchise history as members of the PLL, and able to weather the storm of a tough doubleheader weekend to start things off. But it will not get any easier as they welcome a date with the Whipsnakes this Saturday in Atlanta. So we'll definitely get a good gauge on how well this squad matches up against one of the league's superpowers. And they'll go into week 2 with Brendan Sunday, who they just picked up off the league's player pool, releasing Bryce Wasserman. And Danny, it comes as somewhat of a shock just 1 week into the season to release a guy like Bryce Wasserman.
Yeah, it's a little surprising. I mean, you watched the first weekend, and I think Bryce was only on the roster for one of their 2 games. He was on the 21, and then I think he became guy 20 or 21 for their second game. But he played in the first game, and he really didn't do much. Wasn't in like the flow of their offense, and wasn't all that involved. I think for me, and I sort of tweeted this when Ty Zanders broke the news that Bryce had been released. The surprise is more that he's being outright released. I thought maybe, he doesn't dress. He stays on the 25, though. But sent to the player pool, I thought was a little bit surprising. I know somebody's got to go if you're going to add Brendan Sunday, but I was a little surprised to see Bryce go, particularly because it's Coach Quirk who just had him as a league MVP last summer. So I think there's probably some teams that might want a guy like Bryce. It's tough. I said it at entry draft time when he was coming over, but the things that Bryce does really, really well, the take my man to X and speed dodge, run by him, create my own shot at or just above goal line and score. There's a lot of guys who do that really, really well in the PLL, and teams don't necessarily need multiples of that guy. I think he'd be a guy who you might step in and play at X in place of like a Jordan Wolf, but the Chrome have made sort of their moves there already. So I'm sure they're comfortable, but we'll see if a team like the Water Dogs maybe wants to try and run Bryce out of the box, get him a short stick matchup and invert him a little bit or something like that. I think he could have some success there, but yeah, like I said, a little surprised that he didn't stay on the 25. A little surprised that he made it to the point where he was being released after one game. Not even, they've had 2 games when Bryce only played in one of them. So, I would have thought he would have stayed on the 25.
Chris Hogan's still on that Cannon's 25-man roster, just to keep that in mind as well. But then in terms of good news, the Whipsnakes and Archers, their fans welcomed great news as those teams for now the 3rd season look to be the 2 superpowers here in the PLL, the powerhouses, or another word you could probably say. The Whipsnakes jumping out to an early 9-1 lead and cruising to a 13-7 win over the Chaos. And then the Archers posting a weekend high 18 goals and holding the Atlas to a weekend low of just 6. So the offense, defense, everything seeming to come together very nicely for these 2 teams. And for the Archers, a welcoming sight as they got a handful of goals on Saturday, Austin, in some pretty unconventional ways there early in the game.
Yeah, I mean, both of those games, I think runaway might be a bit of an understatement. The Whipsnakes game, I'll just tie both games up into a bow if that's all good with you. The Whipsnakes, I mean, I think we thought they were going to win this game. I think everybody sort of thought they were going to win this game. I don't know if anybody thought they were going to win the way they did, though. I think it was 10-1 going into the half. The Chaos did not look the same. And I think on the broadcast they said it was something like 18-1. The goals were from the championship to that point at the half. The run is just unbelievable. Chaos, it speaks for itself. I mean, we did not expect them. I think they were a top 5 team in our rankings. I mean, you can't really judge until they're out on the field what they're going to do, and that's a tough matchup to ask of them. The Archers, my God, do they look fantastic.
Filthy.
Tom Schreiber's unbelievable. Grant Ament, unbelievable. That entire offense looks fantastic. The defense looks great. Adam Gittleman looked great in net. Latrell Harris scored a goal.
Oh, it had to get that in there, even though it was going to fit its way in there at some point.
I'm sorry, Ryan. If you didn't think I was bringing up Latrell Harris, ask me about the Archers. Oh my God! And that sideline interview was electric. Yeah, shout out to Latrell. I mean, I'm very happy for him, obviously. But that Archers team, Schreiber's move down the left flank when he switched back to his strong hand, disgusting. That's one of the nicest goals I've seen in a long time. And I've seen it from Tom in the box because he does that a lot, where he cuts to his left down the left side, and then once he has the defender on his back, he'll bring it back to his right hand and fire it. He loves to do that, but he doesn't have that much time and space in box, obviously. So to see him sort of get it, I don't know, a step down might not be fair, but to get his feet set and to be able to step into it, that was disgusting. So, yeah, we kind of expected the Atlas to get run over a little bit. All due respect to Ben Rubio's squad, but they're still learning. But the Archers look fantastic. You can't take anything away from how they did. They were dominant from start to finish.
For the Whipsnakes, Zed Williams scored 4 goals. Mike Earhart scored a 2 and an assist in this one. But in this, the story was the dominance of Joe Nardella, posting a 73% clip at the stripe and scoring a goal and an assist, 6 ground balls. And Dan absolutely padding the stat sheet in this one on the day that he released his first set of NFTs for his pro career.
Yeah, great day for Joe. He's got a habit now of making the best guys in the world look like they're not the best guys in the world. And make no mistake, Max Adler, who the Chaos added, is very, very good. This is his first game action with the PLL rule set. He's never faced off with these rules before. And I think they mentioned that on broadcast, and there is an adjustment there. I think that, if first time, and Joe's been doing it for a few years. He's probably a little more comfortable. And, I think Max is still just adjusting a little bit to that speed of the rules and of the league. But, I wouldn't jump ship on Max Adler or say that the Chaos, blew that pick or anything. He's still one of the best in the world, and he'll be fine. It's a tough way to come into the league to have your first game be against Joe. So, but yeah, I mean, again, the thing that makes him so deadly is that he's winning, and there's not as many guys as besides Joe that stay on and are as dangerous as he is. And it's the prop bets around Joe Nardella are always so fun because it's like, how many ground balls, how many goals, how many face-off wins, like what's he going to do in the stat book today? Because he's going to frustrate you, and that's going to cause matchup problems because you're going to wind up with who knows who stuck out there on defense. If you try and get cute in the sub game and get him off, maybe you get Max Adler stuck on defense on anybody who's on the Whipsnakes. That's scary. The Whipsnakes offense is so loaded that if they can get a matchup out of that because Joe stays on and they play 5-on-5 or something like that, then it just makes it that much harder to deal with all the things that they do. So they're just, I said it, they're just a smothering team, and they're like, I called them lacrosse judo. Like, whatever you try and do to attack them, they reverse and use it against you, and you wind up just like with no options, with just no way to fight back against this team. So you said we all expected them to win this week. I expect them to win pretty much every week. I don't know what the circumstances are going to have to be for me to pick against the Whipsnakes anytime soon. But next week, I think, we said they have the Cannons next week, so we get Lyle versus the Whipsnakes defense. That it's basically the same defense, sans replacing Tyler Warner with Matt Abbott and Charlie Hayes. That Joe Keegs called the best defense to ever play pro lacrosse last year. So Lyle gets to play against that next week, which should be fun. The rejuvenated Paul Rabel is out there, which is going to be great. I'm sure he's going to be anxious to keep this goodwill going that he has. I had said I think it's funny that like if you watch Paul Rabel last year, by the way, the only thing he did badly was shoot. Like, he could dodge, he could play off ball, he could do everything else that he usually does so well, except he shot like 10% or whatever it was. So now that he's not shooting that low anymore, all of a sudden everyone's like, wow, Paul Rabel's good again. It's like, no, he's just shooting better, shooting with more confidence. So I think having him out there and Lyle out there against this defense next week, I don't think anybody's going to pick the Cannons to win, but I don't think anybody's going to be looking past this the way they might have 4 or 5 days ago.
Absolutely. And you look at this matchup here, Lyle against most likely drawing Matt Dunn. Matt Dunn, the 2018 MLL Defensive Player of the Year. You can make a very good case for him being the 2019 PLL Defensive Player of the Year. And then he obviously did win the Defensive Player of the Year last year. So he's coming in, ready for this game with Lyle Thompson. Hasn't probably played against him in a few years. So looking forward to that one. And then in the final game of the weekend, the Redwoods were able to hold on over Chrome. 14-11 was the final. Rob Pannell continued his strong weekend with 2 goals and 3 assists. Jules Henningberg posted a hat trick. Sergio Perkovic unloaded his first 2-bomb of the season. And the stars, Matt Cavanaugh, Miles Jones, Ryan Lee, emerging and showing up for this Redwoods offense. But the big talking point after this game, directly about this game, I should say, because there were other major storylines that were popping off at the time that we'll get into that in a minute. But Chrome attackman Jordan Wolf, what looked like a non-contact leg injury and had to be helped off the field. He looked like he sustained that. They're calling it a lower body injury and a huge blow to this Chrome team, Austin, if he needs to miss any time.
Yeah, Chrome was just hit by so many unforeseen circumstances. I mean, like you said, we'll get into the last little bit of screwiness from the weekend, let's call it. But Jordan Wolf going down, it looked like a hamstring. I know he's had hamstring problems. Kyle Devitt said previously that he had said Jordan Wolf might have hung him up, if not for other circumstances. I hope it's not that. And Randy Stotts, obviously, it sounds like he's going to miss the year with, it could be an ACL. You certainly, when you hear knee injury, that's the first place you go is ACL. And Randy's already had an ACL injury in his career, so I hope it's not that. But yeah, I mean, they've had to make a couple pickups. It'll be interesting to see how they sort of integrate into the lineup. As for on the field, I think they looked okay. I think Pseudo used Jordan McIntosh down low a bit, which is a bit interesting, but I know Jordan pretty well from back in the day, and he's a very underrated offensive weapon, I think, and a two-way, used more as a two-way player now, but he can sure sting it, and he can really play offensively. But I mean, Colin Heacock's going to be your guy that probably steps up. I'd imagine he's a converted midfielder. He was attack at Maryland, and you could even see maybe, I don't know, Brendan Kavanaugh's going to play a lot in here, and Jackson Morrow looked pretty good running around from X. He had a lot of speed actually from behind the net, catching and sort of getting his. I don't know, he wasn't really getting his shot, but just using acceleration to get past defenders to get his passes off. So you can't obviously replace guys like Jordan Wolf and Randy Stotts easily. They're just going to have to hope that they can plug some guys in and do the job until hopefully Jordan's back. Randy's not going to be back for the year, but hopefully some of these guys that they can plug and play get the job done for them, because it's too early in the season to write off a team this good, I think.
Like Sowers, we will hope for a speedy recovery here from Jordan Wolf. Still one of the top attackmen, in the game. But for this Chrome team, you mentioned it there, Austin. Jordan McIntosh, he stepped up big. He scored 4 goals. Colin Heacock didn't look too bad in his PLL debut either. But Dan, if Jordan Wolf is to miss significant time, who needs to step up the most on this Chrome offense to carry the load?
Well, it's going to depend a lot on who goes to that attack spot. A guy that Austin didn't mention that could do it maybe is a Ned Crotty. I think Crotty is good enough to win matchups with Poles. He's good enough to win matchups Poles at midfield, so I think he can beat close defensemen. Doing that would mean breaking up that first midfield line, which I think has looked really good for them. So I'd be hesitant maybe to move Crotty. But they added Tommy Palaszczuk, and Palaszczuk is a incredibly versatile scorer and feeder, distributor. He can carry the ball for you. He can play off ball. This is a guy who's in the last year that Rob Pannell was in the MLL, Tommy had as many points as Rob did. So, Tommy's a guy who could score. He's played on teams with a lot of different dynamic offensive pieces with some of those Atlanta Blaze teams that you saw. So I think he's a good fit for this group, for this pseudo locker room. I don't know if he'll go straight to that attack spot or if he'll come out of the box. It'll depend sort of on how comfortable they were with what they saw from McIntosh there, or if they try and bump Heacock, up there instead. But I think he's a guy who can step in and make a difference for them for sure. I also, you want to hope for that speedy recovery for Wolf. He's had more than hamstring issues in the past. He's played a season on a torn hamstring before. He's had some serious injuries there. You hope it's not a recurrence of one of those. So you really it's a different game without him out there. He's so fun to watch. You really want to see him play. So hopefully it's nothing too serious.
That was really the first, I should say, of 2 stories that broke involving Chrome players there on Sunday afternoon, because Saturday night, another player that will be hitting that won't be available, I should say, for Chrome, Matt Gaudette. Him and Austin Stotts of the Chaos got into an altercation there on Saturday night off the field, saying that it is at a bar, a hotel lobby bar, but they got into a fight. What we're hearing, Dan, obviously the one breaking this story here yesterday, and then we got more details as the day went on, but just a terrible story that took place. I really don't know how to put it into words here. It stinks because it's not like it's 2 Canadians, or 2 Americans, excuse me, and that's really where I think the angle is kind of being taken, as you see now more news outlets pick up this story, and that's just it's not good for the game is really what I'm trying to say. We're trying to grow the game here, and this unfortunately is not good for it if anyone wants to take over here.
Yeah, I had called it at one point over the weekend kind of a mix or equal parts kind of crazy and sad. You just hate to see this kind of thing happen, especially with 2 guys who are so young, and you're thinking can have a bright future and be part of the growth of this game as the trajectory of the PLL is just great. It's taking off in a way that's awesome. We have these, expansion team every year. We've got a great TV deal. The content that comes out is awesome. The sport is really starting to we have some traction here. We have some positive momentum. We need things like this to not happen. You don't want these 2 young men to be affected by this. You don't want their careers to be threatened by this, which I think it's in the realm of possibility to say that this is a career-threatening incident given the circumstances around it for the 2 of them. You don't want their careers to end because of something like this, and you just don't want this to be another thing that's on the radar, as again, there's so much positive in the game right now that we're trying to just get over this next hump and elevate this game to the next level. can't be the things that keep making the news in the mainstream for lacrosse. We're getting on SportsCenter more often. We've got, Chris doing the Lax Top 5 in the college game. We'll have, I'm certain, highlight SportsCenter plays and all kinds of cool stuff from the PLL this summer. Let's keep getting that stuff in front of people to introduce them to the game. Let's not introduce them to the game with this kind of thing. We need to try and demand more from our players, from our media members, from league officials, from all of us, to try and make sure that this is the kind of thing that we remove and not glorify. That we ask, we put players in a position where this kind of behavior is something where it's like, we're going to get clicks and it's going to be exciting. It's going to be covered all over the place. Like, we like impressions, we like views, we like people coming to see our stuff. We don't want them to see this, though. This isn't good for anybody. So, that's kind of my angle. Again, like the saddest part is for the two young men involved, because it's again possibly career threatening for them. The big picture is that lacrosse is doing so much cool stuff right now. Let's get that out there, and not this. We need to get this stuff gone from the game.
Absolutely. This is just more negative ammo that can just be continued to be thrown at us, which is not what we want. We want these highlights. We want the great players in the game, obviously, out there. Lyle Thompson, Paul Rabel going out there and scoring 5 or 6 goals this week. And that's what we want in these headlines, not the situation that we unfortunately had unfold this weekend. And then to consolidate what I was trying to say before, it stinks because it's not like it's two Americans. We got a Canadian on one side and then an Indigenous Native American on the other side. So it's just, in terms of how we're making lacrosse look, and then going to what you were saying, it's just creating more ammo to be thrown at lacrosse. And then for those two, for Canadians and Indigenous Americans, again, not a good look for them. And we don't want that to be how people view them or view those individuals involved in lacrosse. So just a tough situation all around. Austin, just what are your views on it?
I think Dan covered it very well, and I haven't had the chance to meet Austin Stotts or Matt Gaudette before, so I don't want to speak to them as people. I obviously know them as Matt Gaudette obviously has his reputation, but that doesn't excuse whatever took place during this altercation during the week. And Austin Stotts, I don't want to speak to these. Like I said, I don't want to speak to these guys as people. It's what Dan said. It's somebody in one of our private chats had said this. It's like 2 steps forward. He said 10 steps back for lacrosse. It's like, the way I look at it, it's the women's game has grown so much over the last year. You're seeing Charlotte North highlights. You're seeing all of these fantastic women's players getting on SportsCenter and getting their due respect around the game. You're seeing the college game push, the PLL having a massive season, bringing fans back. And then a week in, this is what dominates the headlines for not lacrosse outlets. Obviously, lacrosse outlets are covering this, but major outlets that don't really look at the sport very often are picking this up and running with it. So it's a tough look, and I hope everything works out for these two. I don't know what the ramifications are going to be, and we won't dive into the extent of what's being reported and what's being thrown around by people on social media, because that's not fair to anybody involved. But I hope the best for these two, and I hope everyone is okay after the situation and can sort of move on with this without getting too much scrutiny thrown their way one way or the other.
It was tough. We weren't even fully through week 1 of the season, and we get news like this. So as you're saying, just tough that it occurred. Obviously, we don't want to see stuff like this ever happen again. We wish that this didn't occur, but hopefully we can move on beyond this, and hopefully this is a learning tool for other players, not even just in lacrosse, but really other players, in any other sport, that you got to be obviously responsible for yourself and responsible for your own actions. We'll see how the rest of this story unfolds. But Austin, Dan, that's going to do it for us today. I want to thank you both for joining me today as we reflect on week 1 in the PLL. Again, a wild week 1 that it was, but that is going to do it for today's first episode of the PLL Flash. I want to thank you all for watching. If you are not already, make sure to subscribe to Lacrosse Flash on YouTube. Hit the notification bell so that you don't miss anything, and follow along on Instagram and Twitter at Lacrosse Flash. All the links that you will need will be in the description of the video that you're watching right now. You can also head on over to lacrosseflash.com. You can find a ton of awesome content over there, including our weekly power rankings, Dan's takeaways. We'll have some more written content out throughout the week as well. And then Goal Line Extended will be back on Friday along with our Twitter Spaces pregame show. So make sure to like, follow, and subscribe so that you don't miss anything. But PLL Week 1 is in the books, and we're now on to Week 2 from Atlanta. Like I said, we'll be back on Friday with Goal Line Extended, and we will talk to you then. Cheers.